you right now? And what stands in the way of your financial destiny? What's the destination? What keeps you going every day? For some of you, it feels like it's a lifetime away. Success and consistent trading, the ability to support yourself and your family by means of speculation. And for others, it's for the folks that just started, you think you're going to do it next month. There's going to be a lot of barriers. Lots of barriers that you didn't foresee coming in, and new developing barriers. But a barrier is not a definitive end. It's a problem. And as a speculator, a trader, you have to be a good problem solver. If you don't have problem solving skills, you're going to struggle. For me, when I was coming up as a developing trader, in 1992, I was residing with a family member. And I lived with my aunt and uncle. And the uncle was the one that was a commodity trader in the 80s and tried to talk to me when I was 16 to get me involved in trading, or at least thinking along those lines as a trader and aspiring to be such upon graduating school and getting a degree or so. And when I lived with them, I inherited a lot of bad habits initially, and it caused depression. And some of those bad habits were fear, procrastination, and a underlying sense of not deserving it. So my upbringing was very modest, and we didn't have a whole lot of much really, but we didn't miss it either because we were never exposed to having a lot. So when I saw a family member of my immediate family doing well by all definitions back then, in the 90s, it was your middle class, success story from an outward stand. And I aspired to have that. But upon going to work for a company that put me in a 13-hour routine, just about 6 days a week, and only having Sundays off, I quickly realized that wasn't the path for me. I developed a very strong work ethic. I never missed a day of work, and I wanted to focus on getting out of the rat race. Now, most of you that know me know that I got started as a commodity trader by way of Ken Roberts' course, which really isn't a course. It's you pay to put yourself on a mailing list, let's put it that way. But I'm happy that I got started, because if I would have never gotten started, Lord knows where I'd be at today. Probably very miserable, very unhappy, to say the least. But I worked a lot of hours at my job, and every waking moment that I had an opportunity to read about the marketplace, listen to some commentary about the markets, I was constantly digesting it. I was a sponge that never was filled. It was always an appetite for me to want to learn more, and I've always maintained that, approach about it. And while I really don't learn anything new from other people or other methods or anything like that, I learn a lot about myself in the engagement of the day-by-day relationships to price action, and I learn a lot about human psychology, which I guess in a way has a lot to do with trading, but not in the sense that if we sat down in the same room together and we were talking about the markets, I would gravitate to human psychology a lot. And if you were new, you would want to start talking about entry points and how to get this or how to get that in terms of profits. And that is going to be a problem and a barrier for you. So what I had to do was submit to a lot of time. My approach to doing all this was very structured in the beginning because I already knew it was going to be hard for me. I had no misconceptions or fantasies about how it was going to be easy for me to do it. But at 20 years old, I was thinking to myself that I wanted to be retired at the age of 40. And to my family, that sounded ludicrous. It was unachievable. You couldn't get it. You couldn't obtain that. So submit to the working grind like everyone else does. And that created a sense of anxiety in me to the degree where I was not going to relent until I got myself to the position where I wasn't going to have to work for money. Because I felt working for money was a stupid waste of my time. It was a waste of my energy. And there was a lot better things to be doing than to go to work for someone else. They're never going to appreciate you, not to the degree they should, or that you would want them to. So basically, to have a job or go out into the workforce is rather stupid. So now I know some people are going to scoff at that and say, well, everyone needs to work. They have to have a job. They have to have the ends meet, if you will. And I agree. But that's not a destination. Now, unfortunately, most people create that as their final destination because of procrastination, fear of failure, failure to observe the realities of having the resources, whether you accept the fact that you do or don't. Everyone has the resources. There's absolutely zero excuses why within 10 years anyone can retire. Now, I'm not saying that you are going to retire a multimillionaire, but you could certainly find a way to replace your current income. Now, if you could do that, think about it. Isn't that really the definition of being rich? Now, I'm not saying super wealthy in elite status, but to be rich is you're not working for money anymore. So if you find a way to replace your current income, even if it never goes up, if you just made ends meet, that's rich. Now, some of you would disagree with that because your definition of rich or wealthy or affluent is going to vary from mine. But I'm telling you from a storyline, this is how I came up from this. I came from a very, very modest upbringing, very modest start. So it was a 20-year plan for me. Now, for most of you, you won't subscribe to that. 20 years is too long. Sorry, let me go to the next video. Let me go to another YouTube mentor. Let me see who's selling the system. Okay, give me a process of, give me in 1, 2, 3, give me the profits and wash, rinse, repeat. I never really subscribed to that very long, initially because everyone's baptized in the same way with trading its indicators and buy and sell and this, that, and the other thing. But I found quickly that that wasn't the way to do it. And because I'm a very analytical person, I have a very technical approach to things. I'm methodical in a lot of ways, and I've always been that way. So if someone speaks to me, I'm always analyzing what's their alternative motive. What's their ulterior motive? And maybe there isn't one, but I'm always thinking that. I'm always trying to decipher, get to the root cause of problems, because that's where the solution resides. In the American society, we're trained to accept the problem and just grind through it. I don't subscribe to that view. I subscribe to the fact that there is an alternative solution to our present condition that is working too much for too little. So I had to submit to a long-term process because I had readily admitted that my aptitude for it was probably going to be insufficient. So therefore, I allowed myself up to the age of 40 years old before I would really consider myself proficient, success, whatever. Okay, so I was already building in a far and wide definition of success, and I gave it a long-term deadline. Now, if you're living with your folks, or if you're living with family members, or if you're living with a person that you don't really want to be with, but because of necessity you have to be there, that is many times a very toxic environment. And when I began trading, I kept it quiet. I didn't tell anybody what I was doing because I already knew what the answer was going to be. That's stupid. You're going to lose your money. And truth be told, I did. I lost money the first time I traded. And it was a very good thing. It was very good for me to have that happen to me. Because, number one, it created a sober respect for the fact that, A, you can lose money. It's real. Okay? But also, I knew someone profited off of me. Now, right away, you know what it feels like when you lose money. You're already cussing at the computer screen or cussing at your spouse like they had something to do with it. Because you personify the loss and you make it an attack on you. Now, I didn't see it like that. My psychological makeup is I want to know what the cause and effect is, and I want to see what I could do to repeat that same phenomenon. But now in this sense, I have to find a reverse approach to it. So I have to be the one that makes the win. I have to capture that win. So my pursuit from the age of 20 was to kind of like formulate a process for myself that would weather all of the inbound negativity that's going to come my way, because I couldn't keep it quiet for long. And eventually people are going to find out what I'm doing. I was a young man. I was stupid. When I had my hands on some money, I let the world know I had it. And I allowed myself to be changed outwardly and inwardly because of myself living with a family member and a deep-rooted sense of feeling the need to feel significant. Okay, when I wrote those tutorials back in 2010, and speaking from a vantage point of the average Joe, I was speaking from personal experience. I am average Michael Joe Huddleston. Okay, I have a lot of understanding and wisdom today, but I have not forgot where I came from. So the problems I was encountering basically was I was doing something I really, really wanted, but I couldn't share with anyone. So I was like a sports car in neutral, but with the gas pedal, pressed to the floor, couldn't go anywhere. And you'll burn out doing that. So the only way I would do it was to be able to live my way of doing things around my closest friends, not my family, and online, because it didn't feel real to me any other way. So I was in a stance that was almost inviting an arm wrestling match internally, because my family would always tell me, you need to get up, go to work on time tomorrow, and put your day in. Well, my day was 13 and a half hours. And I did this 6 days a week to bring home $183 a week. Now, I need to say that again. $183 a week after taxes, 6 days a week, 13 and a half hours. Think about that. I was being taken advantage of, but I was sold on the idea that I would be made a route manager and I'd be a boss and I wouldn't have to do the route I was running. So I believed the rat race lies. I was never going to amount to that. The company never survived that long. So the point I'm trying to make is all of us have these real world arm wrestling matches. And we have to balance the inbound negativity, doubt, naysayers, and you also still have to find a way to be motivated. The only way you're going to do that is if you have a action plan that's written out, well defined, with a specific destination and a deadline for that destination. Because basically what we're doing is we're trying to make a business plan for our dream. My dream at 20 was I wanted to be retired at 40. I wanted to be a millionaire. $1 million, not 50 million, not 80 million. I wanted to have $1 million after taxes when I was in my 40s. The problem I had was, how do I get there? Because my first trade was a losing position on an orange juice option, trading commodities. I lost half of what I put up the very first trade in one day. And that motivated me more than anything ever in trading, because I knew someone else made more than I earned in a month in one day on my stupidity. Now, I didn't victimize myself. I didn't beat myself up. I said, this is exactly what I'm going to do the rest of my life. Now, how many of you listening to my voice right now would have had that same thought process? Most of you would have been like, hell no, I'm out of here. I want to take whatever I got left and call it quits. And I'll just be thankful I didn't get all my money taken. And that's normal. But I'm not normal. I've never been classified as normal even as a child. I was always the quiet one. And you know what they say about the quiet ones? You got to watch out for those guys. But I had all of the outward interference coming by way of my family members. They would be arguing around me about meeting their financial means every month, going to work sick, fearing that if they stayed home, they'd be punished by their superiors. And I saw all that. At the same time, I was able to do a small portion of profits in the beginning, but I was growing it slowly. The plan I sat down with, and I get a lot of emails, many emails every single week, and invariably I will probably have about 25 to 30 questions that are pretty much like what I'm going to speak about now. How did I start, and how did I keep myself balanced and focused, weathering all of the adversities that come by way of a developing trader? Well, the first and foremost is you have to be tenacious. You can't accept failure as a final destination. You're going to fail. Every stop loss that's hit, every collapsed trade that you feel that doesn't fall in line with your trading plan, that is a failure. Failure is a requirement for success. It's absolutely part of the process, because you're not going to know the solutions to long-term consistency until you have these adversities. I already put that in my plan in the beginning. I anticipated losing 70% of the time. Think about that now. I anticipated being wrong 70% of the time. I had no idea what I was doing, but I realized that the statistics alone and the probabilities of staying with one side of the marketplace, I was only a buyer, that I would still mathematically come out as a net gain. Think about that. I sat down and I defined I needed a plan that would arrive at $1 million after taxes when I turned 40. That was my plan. How was I going to get there? That was the problem. So I sat down, pen and pad, and I would come up with all these different solutions I had in mind, or potential outcomes that would either get me there at the age of 40 or very close to it. Now again, I aimed for age of 40, but I already built in the allowance for it may take a couple extra years beyond that too. Now you're probably asking yourself, because $1 million today isn't nowhere near what $1 million was back in 1992, but why $1 million? Because I had already made it up in my mind that if I made 10%, now this is going to be a shocker, if I only made 10% a year, yes, 10% annually, I could draw a six-figure income and I would never worry about money again. I wanted to escape the necessity of working for money. I didn't want to work for money. Now, I was willing to work 20 years to get to that point because I came from nowhere. I come up from, grassroots, low income. That was me. That's where I came from. My family is not affluent. So for me to come up from really nothing, I had to be realistic. And no one was guiding me. Well, God was, but I'm not going to preach on that. But no one sat next to me in a coaching capacity and said, do this, don't do that. Everything I did was by trial and error, and I was losing lots of money learning all these things. Real money, not demo account. So what I sat down with pen and pad was I had a 20-year plan to make $1 million after taxes. So how do we do that? So I figured if I did this, number one, I got 20 years of time. So I have lots of time to make errors and not be right all the time and only be right 30% of the time. I would have to make $50,000 every year, okay, to get that after taxes. So I have to make enough to make a $50,000 net gain every single year, 20 years in a row to achieve this. Now, in a perfect world, that would be expected. And I was willing to submit to that. That means I would make money, lose money, make money, lose money, but at the end of the year, after taxes, I should arrive at $50,000 net. And I'm not spending the money. I'm not going to buy a car. I'm not going to go on vacation. I'm not trying to impress my girlfriend. I'm not trying to do all those types of things. I'm going to submit to this process of 20 years. I was not going to fail. That was in my mind. Everything was this. I didn't have a plan B. There was no, well, maybe I'll just settle and just get a better job. I was not working the rest of my life. That was not going to happen. But I also modularly broke that down into other potential ways of getting to that same outcome. And the idea basically is what that spreadsheet is I shared back in 2010, breaking down how whatever I do in terms of my weekly goal, I have 3 different ways I can do it. I can do it as a scalper, I can do it as a day trader, or I can do it as one shot, one kill. So I'm not limiting myself to only one way of doing something, because that creates a sense of urgency. And if it doesn't work, not only is it debilitating mentally, but it puts you behind the 8 ball, and then you have to play catch up. And that's why I pick low-hanging fruit. Now you're probably thinking to yourself, $1 million, Michael, that's not low-hanging fruit. Well, over 20 years it is. Absolutely. And that's where I came from. Modesty and modest results. That's what I was looking for. 20 years to get to a $1 million. And then all I had to do at $1 million is to make 10% a year, and I'm going to make $100,000 a year. And who cares if it's taxed? I can live off of that money the rest of my life and never have to have a job. That's all I wanted. That's all I wanted. I didn't want to be a multi-millionaire, billionaire, or a globetrotter, spending money all over the place. That wasn't what I wanted. I didn't have that mindset when I was a younger man. Didn't think like that. So eventually, as I was working towards becoming better at defining setups, I realized that I could do far more than 10% a year, and I could do a lot with very little per week. My actual plan was trading the bond market, the U.S. Treasury market. Now, this is not an invitation for you to try to repeat what I did. Obviously, I lost a lot of money doing this too. It wasn't just making money. But my plan was, in the bond market, every tick, and there's 32 ticks in a full handle move in the Treasury market. Each one of these ticks is worth $31.25. My average stop loss for a bond trade was about 5 ticks. So what I wanted to do was break the market down in such a way where all I needed was 13 ticks on 5 contracts of the Treasury bonds. If I did this every single week using a percentage approach to money management, I would eventually grow faster than I would need for a 20-year plan. Now, I didn't know this right away. Okay, when I first started trading, the first couple of years, I was only sticking to one lot. Give me one lot and I'll build it up. Give me one lot and I'll build it up. It wasn't until I started studying the Kelly approach, okay, and Kelly criterion with the approach to money management that was mentioned by Larry Williams. And I looked at some things with that, and I came up with a slightly different approach of using that same type of thinking. And I had a way of accelerating gains and then also neutralizing the effects of drawdown. and calling, a more smoother approach to when the market is not giving you wins. If you're in a losing cycle, you have to go back to a point at which where you're not going to lose money. Because not only are you trading with money that can be lost, but you're also trading with mental capital. And if you lose your mental capital, regardless of how much money you have in your bank account or trading account, you're trading with scared money. And trading with scared money never is consistently profitable. It never is like that. So what I had was a plan that was long-term, but it had different approaches to getting there. And I was submitting to time, lots of it. Now, if I was selling the idea that I could teach you how to do this and get rich and be self-sufficient in 20 years, no one would subscribe to that view. But that's exactly how I started. Now, as I matured as a developing trader over the years, I've learned a lot. Tons of things that help me do things with a short-term time horizon. And if I'm feeling competitive, I can do things explosively in terms of percentage gain. That's not necessary. When I teach folks can only focus on getting 25 pips per week net, I mean that. I absolutely mean that. Because if you can do one thing well and repeat it, it doesn't matter how much you start with. You just have to have the time and the consistency and discipline to stick to it. Now, what happened when I was going through this process and having adversities? Losing money sometimes, fearing that my family would find out that I was doing it. I had all kinds of things, that much more than the average person just trying to trade. Because most of you already have told your spouse or significant other or your boss or people at your job that you're going to trade. So you already created the problem for yourself. It's worse when you've told no one and you're successful and you can't share it with anyone. It's like you're in prison, that you created this, your own prison. You're successful, but you can't enjoy it. See, my problem was I had a lot of friends that didn't have anything, and I already knew they were moochers. If I showcased it, all I'm going to do is ask for grief, and that's exactly what I did. I ended up getting a lot of friends that really weren't my friends. They wanted something from me, and usually it was money. So how did I do it? How did I weather all those psychological and emotional storms coming up? I had that plan. Every time that I would hit a stumbling block or I missed my mark in terms of where I was hoping to be at the end of the month or the end of the week or that particular trading day, I'd go back to that plan and look at it and read it and remind myself, what am I doing? Why am I even doing this? I have a long-term plan. I'm not going to work the rest of my life. I don't want to work for a paycheck. I don't want to work for a boss. I don't want a boss. I'm married to one, but I don't want to work for one for money. So if I can find a way to get to that point, I'm successful. I'm successful. And I didn't want to be elite status. I didn't want to be Mr. Know-It-All in trading. That's not what I got into this for. But because of my passion and because of the small universe that I created for myself, none of my friends had the ability to do what I could do. I could jump on an airplane the next day, go to Bermuda and stay there for a week at a 5-star hotel and literally do it on a whim. They couldn't do that. So I was struggling to enjoy the whole process. And the only thing that I found enjoyment was I was sticking to my rules. Even when I was not getting the results I was hoping for, I had a plan that was written that allowed me to not overreact to the normal, already anticipated disadvantages and adversities that come by way of speculating, because you're going to lose money, period. You're going to lose it, okay? But you have to know what you're going to do and how you're going to react to that, and it has to be written down. Think about it. When businesses start, they start with a business plan. Why do they do that? Because they have to observe going into it where the risks are, what the monetary loss and requirements are going to be, and what's their goal. What are they aiming for? Now, their projections are going to change, obviously, but they have to have some kind of goal in mind and a target to hit. Otherwise, they're never going to hit anything that's going to be measurable. So by having a plan that's well written with multiple approaches to arrive at that same defined definition, and that definition is going to be all different for all of us. Mine was I wanted to have $1 million at the age of 40 so I could just make 10% a year after taxes. That's it. Because I wanted to be a six-figure income maker, and that was it. Six-figure income maker, at 40 years old and not having to go to work. That was my goal. Everybody right now at 20 years old, they don't want to work tomorrow. They want to quit today. They want to do it with a $1,000 trading account, and they're going to own the world. That's not realistic. You're putting so much pressure on yourself. You're doomed. You're guaranteeing inviting failure, and you're not going to be able to weather the adversities that's going to come. So by having an action plan that says, well, I can take a trade per week that gives me 25 pips, and once I get that, I stop. Or I can put on a trade that allows me to lock in that and let it go for a little bit more and hopefully offset some losses that come in the future. You have to give yourself permission to do the very minimum and be content with that. Finding contentment with enough is the secret. The rest is just time and discipline. Until you submit to that, success is going to evade you. Until next time, I wish good luck and good trading.